Don't tell any stories. It is such a thrill. I just think the world of you. And having looked in the index of the book, we have a lot of history to do with Lakefield and the Sherins. And let's just think of the period starting in 1822. Perhaps you'd give some of your recollection. Well, isn't that a typical McCracken, blah, blah, blah? I would say from doing your research in your family history, well, if you want entertainment, this is the place to come.
Sandy, first of all, I'd like to thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. And I must say, though, that when Harold Kidd talked to me on the telephone and told me about all the people that had been interviewed and had since died, I sort of had a second thought.
Oh, we have a doctor in the house.
Anyway, I'm here.
That's great. That's great.
1822. Well, I think I'd like to go back a little further than that. The first recorded Sherin coming to North America was in 1646. It was on the ship Elizabeth, and he was going to New England. Now, I don't know anything about our New England Sherins, or very little, but I have a postcard that somebody sent me years ago when they were traveling through Maine, and there's a picture on the postcard of the John Sherin family farm. So I've got it here, I think. Anyway, so that's the first recorded Sherin coming to North America. After that, the most detailed information we have is on one James Sherin, who was a Scot in the British Army stationed in Ireland. How's that? Anyway, he had 5 children, one of whom was my great-great-grandfather, Henry Sherin. And he and his family immigrated to Canada in 1822, and that's the dates you're talking about. Okay, where do we go from here?
Who came and settled in the Lakefield area then?
Well, that wasn't until 1854, when John Christopher Sherin, my great-grandfather, came here. And he came from a farm in Emily Township near Mimi, and he came over here to start a general store, which opened in 1855.
Where did he have the store?
Where the present Lakefield Clinic is. And the warehouse that was built behind it is rather a historical building too.
Where did he live while he had his business there?
He lived across the street, diagonally across the street, where the art shop is now. I think there was a bakery there.
Mm-hmm. So he built that house?
I think he did.
Mm-hmm. And were there other Sherins that came at the same time to the Lakefield
Not
area?
at the same time. A year or so later, his younger brother, Sam, came from the farm and worked in the store with him for 12 years.
What other interest did they have in the village besides, working day and night?
Well, John Christopher, who was the first to come here, my great-grandfather, he was sort of a wheeler dealer. He was into a lot of things. He left the store for 5 years in the hands of the Medill brothers and ran the lumber mill for Strickland, Colonel Strickland. And he also got into the oil exploration business in Dummer and Smith Townships, I guess. That didn't work out. Obviously. Another thing he did was he started the Lakefield News, which was the first newspaper.
Oh,
He was also a justice of the peace. What else? He was on the first council when the village was incorporated in 1875. And he was superintendent of the Methodist Church Sunday School for 29 years. I guess that's about all I can tell you.
oh, that's about all. Well, I'd say that would fill the history book in itself then. Now, from that generation, how do we work our way down to the generation that you were? That was at your, you go then to grandparents and parents?
Well, J.C. had 4 children, Emma, Marianne, Wesley, and my grandfather. That would be J.H. Sherin. And he, my grandfather, went into the store with his father, and that became, J.C. Sherin and Sons, and son. And I think the store was sold around 1925, something like, or 35, I can't remember which.
Mm-hmm. So then, your father, did he grow up in Lakefield too?
Yes, he grew up in Lakefield.
Now, I understand that the Sherins had the house where the art shop is, and then there were 2 houses on Regent Street. How did that go?
Okay, the one that you lived in was the one that J.C. moved to after he left the one on Queen Street, the art shop. He moved there in 1888,
Yes, yes.
so that when Harry sold the house to you, that was in 1986,
Mhm.
so that house had been in the family for 98 years, right?
Yes.
The other house you're referring to is the one that Alec Nichols lives in. That was Sam's house. Sam Sherin, his brother's house.
Mhm. So your father grew up in which house then?
In your house.
All right.
Right.
And then, yeah, my house. I was the housekeeper there.
Same house.
That's right. In fact, in the attic of that house, there are still the original beds that were there for the servants, which was quite exciting. They were wooden bunk beds that were put in. I sure could have used them. Not the beds, but the servants. Especially for cooking. Now, that is an era to do with the history of the Sherin family. Do you have any special stories that you remember hearing being passed down about escapades or special happenings?
Well, a few.
You're among friends.
My Uncle George was a bit of a character, and I guess when he was a fairly young child and his mother was bathing him in the bathtub, remember the claw-footed bathtub in the bathroom?
Yes.
All right. So he, I guess she turned her back, and the next thing she knew, he was running down the street naked with a roll of toilet paper trailing behind him.
Oh, that just happens every day in Lakefield. Well, that sort of adds flavor.
There's also the story about my 2 uncles pushing the principal of the public school down the stairs in the old public school. I hope he didn't get injured too bad.
Yeah, you need a doctor then. When you mentioned the bathroom in the Sherin home, the first thing Harry Sherin said to me when I purchased the home was that it was the first house built with the architectural plans to actually have a bathroom inside. So it was literally the oldest
original indoor bathroom in the village. And that claw tub was just the neatest. It probably will stand the test of times. But Harry Sherin used to say that everybody in the village thought Mr. Sherin was nuts to put an indoor bathroom in. That was such a strange thing to do. Now, that gives some really insight into the history of the Sherin family. Let's now move to learn more about you. Tell us where you were born and what.
I think, Sandy, before we do that, I'd like to say a few words about the warehouse designed behind the store in Lakefield. That's an architect-designed warehouse, and it was designed to store food, and the windows were only put on the north side so that the sun and warmth wouldn't get in. They were hanging sides of meat there and keeping perishables and so on. The walls are 2 feet thick. It's amazing, and I think it was a couple of the Richardson brothers from Lakefield that did the stonework, and it was pointed up with limestone from the area, lime I should say, and it was, the lime was slaked in a pit nearby, actually. So it's, there are also other buildings on that lot where there's a parking lot now, and there was a large shed, I guess, which was used as a stable and later a garage. I remember getting some planks from the floor of that building to do something with, and I couldn't bear the smell when I started to saw them up. The years of horses standing there. Anyway, that's just one point. It later became used for other things. It was even a gym, a boxing gym. My grandfather, J.H., was a bit of a boxer, and many other things. Finally, an egg hatchery, as you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, was that started by Harry?
Yes.
The egg hatchery then? So he did that all of his life, basically?
Well, basically, I think my uncles were playboys. They never really did an awful lot.
Good old Lakefield.
Oh.
Well, give us a bit of the background of where you grew up and through your education.
I'd rather talk about everybody else. Born in Toronto in the Beaches area, if you know. My parents paid $50 to the doctor to deliver me. When I went into practice 30 years later, the fee was $55. Didn't change. Anyway, we left Toronto at an early age, and when I was young, and I grew up in Port Hope, and went to school there.
Where, at Trinity?
No, I went to the public schools.
Mm-hmm. And when you finished the public school, what did you do?
Well, I joined, where I was joining the Navy, and the war ended, so I went on to college. I didn't see any active service.
And what did you take at college then?
Well, the first course I took was a Bachelor of Arts. I wanted to get into medicine, but because the servicemen were coming back in droves and they had preference, I couldn't get in. So I did a Bachelor of Arts with pre-medical subjects. And after that, I sort of got interested in anthropology, and I thought I'd do some further work in anthropology, so I did my master's degree in anthropology. Eventually, I got around to going into medicine.
So where did you go for training for that?
Well, I stayed right at the University of Toronto. I was there for 10 years, 45 to 55, consecutively.
Then after you graduated, where did you head to?
headed to Vancouver.
It's the opposite direction for sure.
I should say that I joined the University Naval Training Division and had spent most of my summers at sea in the Navy. And I'd been out west and I enjoyed the West Coast, so I thought I'd go back and maybe practice it. So I interned in the Vancouver General Hospital, and during the course of that internship I found out that really I couldn't practice the kind of medicine I wanted to practice in the small communities in BC, so I came back home, or back this way.
So is that when you chose to come to Lakefield?
Yes, I might say that I was receiving letters from Dr. Gassel, who encouraged me to come back. And so I came back and did locums for him for 2 weeks in '56 before starting my own practice.
And so you formally moved here in '56?
That's correct.
And where did you first live then when you came here?
Well, actually, that brings up the storehouse again. Harry had built a rather comfortable little apartment in the upper floor of the storehouse, and so that's where I lived for the first few months after coming back.
And where were you practicing with Dr. Gassel?
Well, no, I was practicing. I did his practice for 2 weeks while he was away. And after that I was, we bought the Porter House across from the United Church and set up an office there.
Okay, so that's where you were.
Actually, I saw my first patient in the warehouse sitting on an egg crate.
And it wasn't a chicken?
Who was that, doctor?
It was Ernie Finn, if you ever
Ernie Finn.
ever lived out the highway out.
No.
So you spent about 5 years having your practice in your home, did you?
That's right.
Lois Keller, who was going to interview you, had mentioned the early years when you were here, and I remember all the fun and the laughter. I remember with Mom and Dad and that sort of thing, and there were always great fun at the town hall, and there were always the dances upstairs. And I remember how much my dad especially loved to dress up in Halloween, and it was always take the kids around the neighborhood for trick or treat, and then go to the dance in the town hall for the adults. So there must have been one busy babysitter going around that had to look after all of us while the adults went to the dance. So Lois recalls that at one of the Halloween night dances, there were a couple of people who came in, and your wife came as a nurse pushing a patient completely swathed in bandages. I wonder who that patient was, completely swathed in bandages.
My memory's not that good.
Suddenly, that's right. And as a result of that that evening, you shared first prize with Lois and Jerry Keller, who were representing Little Abner and Daisy May. Do you have any other recollections of the activities that went on in the town hall?
No, I don't, actually. That's truthfully. I think I only made it once or twice. Invariably, I'd be called out or something.
That's true.
Well, during this time, you had become official doctor at Curve Lake. Is that right? Was it at this time or later?
Well, when I first came here, Sandy, the Department of Indian Affairs had appointed a doctor from the village to be the Curve Lake band doctor. And when I came, I think it was Bob Shepard, if you remember.
Yes,
You
my
sure
mother.
do, yeah.
My mother was his
You
nurse.
sure do. Anyway, Bob said, "Look, I don't want this particularly. Why don't you take it over? You're just starting," and so on. So I did, and I think that I was only the designated band physician for several years, after which the rules of the game changed, and I've forgotten the plan that came in, but the natives could go where they wanted. But I guess because I was the last one on the totem pole, no pun intended, that they still continue to come to me, many of them.
I was pleased to hear of this special honor that was given to you in August of 1973 at a Curve Lake powwow, and you were made honorary Chief Healing Man. That must have been quite a ceremony. Can you tell us a little bit about what it entailed?
Yeah, this was the powwow. I don't know whether people have been to the powwow at Curve Lake. Anyway, they have a raised platform at that time anyway, and so I was called up, and Elsie Knott and Dalton Jacobs, I've forgotten, I think it was Elsie who was the chief at that time. Dalton would be a counselor. Anyway, they presented me with a headdress and a little pin with my name on it, and then I had to follow them around and do a dance. And shortly after, it started to rain, and they were doing the wrong dance.
Would you care to show us that? I understand that honor, though, that not too many honors have been given out to people by Curve Lake along that field.
Well, I can remember 3 or 4. Who's the dealer down? Car dealer?
Keith Brown.
Keith Brown, I think, is
He was
one.
a member of Parliament.
That's right, at the time.
Yes. And
And
Premier Bill Davis.
Yeah, Bill Davis. And who else? There was a teacher out on the reserve who had taught the natives for many years, and she was made it on.
Miss Cummings?
That's right.
Is the name?
I think that was it.
I understand that Bill Davis
Was given a special name too. He was referred to as Chief White Cloud.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
So during all this time, you said that you had your office in your home for 5 years, and then where did your office go?
Well, where the Lakefield Clinic now is. Well, actually, a little farther in, because Len had his butcher shop right next to it.
There's a combination.
Some of my colleagues in Peterborough said they were going to come out and switch signs.
Would you tell us a little bit about your children?
Well, I have 4 children, 2 stepchildren. My oldest, Joanne, is a social worker. She has her master's degree in social work or education. And she's presently just taken a new job with Madame Vanier Institute in London. I haven't heard the details yet. She's quite thrilled about it. Stephen, my son, is working with the Windsor Casino in Windsor and has been there since before it opened. I think that he'd like to change jobs, but I'm not sure he will. He's got a good union position and so on. And Rosemary, my second daughter, is also a social worker. She's in London. She's been working with St. Joseph's General Hospital. And Barbara, my youngest daughter, is in Hong Kong. She's been in the Far East for many years. She was in Japan for 3 years, and now she's been in Hong Kong for another 3. She's basically teaching English while she's supervising the school.
They certainly have grown up.
Really?
Absolutely. Now, I understand that in 1974, this is when you were taking a teaching position at University of Western Ontario, is that correct?
That's right.
And Lois Keller said that at this time, Joanne stayed here for a year with Lois, is that right?
That's right.
And then where did Joanne go after the year staying with Lois Keller?
She went to Queens, where she did her initial degree,
Okay.
Bachelor of Arts or Social Work.
Now, I do recall in 1974 when Dr. Sherin was leaving that there was a wonderful party in his honor, and that Del Facey was the master of ceremonies at the Lakefield Arena for this. Was Del Facey still principal of Lakefield High School at that time?
I think so, but Sandy, he wasn't the master of ceremonies. Molly Newsom was the master of ceremonies.
okay.
Mistress of ceremonies.
Mistresses, yes.
Dell did read a history of the family, I guess.
Oh, okay, yes. Now, he was
I
in
think
a,
he was principal of Lakefield District High School.
yes, and he was in a band. Now, did you join that band at all? Did you have any musical talents?
Well, that's like yesterday. No, I don't have any. I was in the band without talent.
Oh, well, it's nice to have someone there for that reason, I guess. I do know that at this special evening, Dr. Sherin was presented with a purse of money in appreciation. And what some of you may not know is that became the Dr. P. Sherin Award, to be presented annually at the Lakefield District Secondary School commencement exercises to a graduating student who made significant progress through their secondary school program. What a wonderful, giving, caring person you are to do that, and to think of all the students that have gone on with your encouragement, and what a wonderful thing to do when this gift was given to you from the village. So every year when we look through all the commencement brochures, which we have several, we have a list of all the students who received these awards, and it's quite interesting to find out what they're doing now. But this is just one of the many things that Dr. Sherin, you have done just to give back to the community. Now, that wasn't just the end of your busy, busy time. Let's talk about after your time in London, Ontario. You decided to take a trip to Africa. I may just go over to Tim Hortons, but you decide to go to Africa. Would you tell us how that all came about?
Well, I retired from the university in 1986, and we moved up to the old family cottage on Stony Lake. And there I was sitting around with nothing to do, so I got a little restless. And looking through my medical journals, I came up with an advertisement looking for a physician to go to Africa on a fact-finding mission, actually, to see if this Bush hospital in Nigeria was a suitable place for rotating Canadian doctors through to help run the hospital. And so I talked to the chap who was organizing this, and he was a Nigerian. Interesting story. He'd won a lottery in Canada for over $1 million. And so he'd gone back to his native village, which was right in the middle of the bush in central Nigeria, and had built this hospital and equipped it. Wow. And for his village, Big Opaya to be exact. So anyway, make a long story short, I went over to see what I could find out. And unfortunately, it turned out that it wasn't a suitable place for our doctors to go. I didn't have running water or electricity most of the time. And although the people were wonderful, I really enjoyed the people, but the medical situation was pretty grim.
Now, from that, did it result in a student coming back here, Sabo?
Yes, Sabo.
Tell us about Sabo.
Okay, Sabo was a young Nigerian about in his early 20s who was a very bright lad. He was my interpreter, and I got to be quite good friends with him. He had finished his West African high school education, but he couldn't get his certificate because he had to have so much money to get the certificate. Anyway, so when I got back here after a few months in Nigeria, I thought maybe we could bring him over and put him through nursing. He was very good around the hospital. So this is what we did with the help of all the people in the church, United Church.
Yes, the people of the United Church really stood behind him, didn't they, and did a lot of fundraising to help to get him through that. Now, then, I understand you must have had itchy feet again, because starting in 1988, you started to spend your winters doing something different on cruise ships?
That's right. No, I think it was 92, actually. But in this period of time, from university to 92, I spent a lot of time doing locums for doctors in the area who were either ill or going on holidays, and because I knew most of them, and so it wasn't a hard thing to do. I also had gone to Stewart, BC, on the border of Alaska for a month or two to work in a church clinic out there. But getting back to 92, yes, I went to sea for 5 winters on cruise ships.
Well, tell us more.
Well, it was work. It wasn't love, Doctor. It was hard work, depending on the size of the ship. A lot of things happened. A lot of very good things. I met lots of wonderful people. I worked mainly for the Norwegian cruise lines, although I was 1 year on the Royal Cruise Line. But anyway, the nurses were great. They were invariably blue nosers from the East Coast, or Newfoundland, and excellent nurses. The last 2 years, I was given the largest ship in the fleet, the Norway. I don't know what, anybody been on the Norway? SS Norway was the only steamship, cruise ship, I think, in service. But anyway, it would accommodate up to 2,600 passengers and with 1,000 crew. So there's more people than are in Lakefield. With 2 doctors and 3 nurses. So we were working hard. We worked 2 months on and 1 month off. And on that ship, the Norway, I was working with a doctor, Dr. Sherin, with 2 R's in his name. And we'd never met, didn't know anything about each other, but we started comparing notes, and damned if we weren't related. And it turned out that his great-great-grandfather was my great-great-grandfather's brother.
Oh, what a small world.
And it's documented on paper. He got the paper and showed it to me that in 1874, I think it was, his branch of the family sat down and decided to put another R in their name. They'd had one, but they decided to put another R because they thought the one R sounded French. Strange. Anyway, Daryl was the great-great-grandson of Robert Sherin, who we knew little about. We knew he'd gone western Ontario, and I guess he kept going because Daryl was from Kelowna, BC. He was a retired surgeon from Kelowna.
That is a very chance meeting. Now, after doing these types of things on the cruise ship, is this when you decided to come back and sort of retire?
I think so.
But that really hasn't been either. You've been very active as a member of the Nick Villani Committee for a new clinic in Lakefield.
Well, that's a very new thing, Sandy. I haven't been very active because I've only been to 2 meetings.
Well, keep up the good work. Looking back that your life has been so busy, do you have some other things that you would still like to do? Places to go?
Well, I wouldn't mind doing a few more trips, but I'm not sure that, that will be possible. As far as medicine goes, I've retired completely. I don't have my license now. I thought I'd better quit before I hurt somebody.
So you can't put a bandage on my cut finger? Oh, this certainly is just an amazing life that you have had. You've given so much to the village. Your whole family has enriched our area. And I know that we all have special memories of Dr. Sherin, and it would be lovely if some of you would like to share any thoughts or any comments, or do you have any questions to ask Dr. Sherin?
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Sherin, can you describe a little bit of what it was like going out on calls, how far from the village you might go, and the kind of conditions that you would go under?
Well, those were the days when doctors made house calls.
Yeah.
Yes, I can remember many house calls where I got stuck in snowbanks, and after a while I got smart. I had farmers put a lantern on their gate at night so that I could find them, and I took along a neighbor to shovel snow when I got stuck. Sandy Millions. For farm pain. Anyway, sure. I used to go as far as almost to Coe Hill maybe about 90 miles return. Wasn't unusual. A couple of really interesting calls I can remember making. One was on a Sunday evening when we were just relaxing at the house. I got a call from the local Catholic priest. Would I come with him on a call? I said, sure. And so we got in his car and drove to the end of a lane where a farmer met us with a horse and a box sleigh. And this was in the days when we had a lot of snow. And I can remember going across the fields and across the fences and just seeing that much fence post sticking up out of the snow. Anyway, we went to this old farmhouse, brick farmhouse in the middle of Durrow, I think it was. And of course, the old bachelor was stone cold dead and had been that way for a couple of days. Boy, oh boy, that house was cold. So anytime a Catholic priest calls me now, I'm a little leery about going on these phones. Another time I remember going early one winter morning, February morning, colder than Billy be darned, and meeting Doug Dunford up at Dunford's Landing on Stony Lake to go across the ice on a sleigh. Again, well, yeah, it was a sleigh. It was an open lumber sleigh, I think, with 2 horses. And man, was it cold. There was a fellow on an island out there that had a heart attack, I think. Anyway, it was so cold that when the horses breathed out, the breath just hung in the air. I looked back and you could see each breath for about 100 feet behind it.
Any other questions or?
Yes.
So Sharon, did you ever keep in touch with the hospital and doctor in Africa?
No, it went down the tubes, unfortunately. Because it had been set up with expatriate doctors like doctors from India and so on to run it. And the manager of the hospital was this Nigerian doctor's brother from Canada, and he didn't know very much about medicine or about doctors, or, you know, there's a lot of unfortunate graft and thievery and so on. For instance, when McGarry, that's the name of the doctor here in Canada, when he ordered equipment to be sent to the hospital in Nigeria, it would go by ship to Lagos, which would be the nearest port. And much of it would be stolen at the port. And he told me that one time he got a telephone call from somebody who wanted to sell him some of his equipment.
I mentioned before that when I was in high school, my very best friend, Pat Murphy, Pat's mother, was one of your nurses.
Yes.
And Dr. Sherin told me that he still keeps in touch with Louise Murphy, and just recently had lunch with Louise and Pat. Who were some of the other nurses that you had?
Oh, gee. Shirley Norris was I think, with me for about 5 years. And Elizabeth Manning, I think, was the last one I had for a year or so. And before that, I think there were one or two that just were there for a year. And Louise Murphy was there for, I think, about 8 to 10 years.
Harold, did you have a question?
Doctor, what relation, were you and Harry, were your first cousins?
No, Harry was an uncle, step-uncle.
Okay.
My grandfather, his father married twice.
Okay.
His father, my grandfather, married John McEwen, that's the Presbyterian minister's daughter, Clara Plater McEwen. And she died in childbirth the same day that my father was born. And I have the newspaper, the Lakefield News, with the notice of my father's birth and my grandmother's death in the same paper.
Tell them about the history of the picture that I gave you when I moved from the home.
Okay, Sandy very kindly gave me a picture of J.C., which was a large charcoal portrait, and also of his wife, Elizabeth Moles. And so I had the picture of J.C. framed by Del Facey, by the way, and we have hung it in the church near the Friendship Room. That's the United Church. And underneath, in a glass case, is a cane, a gold-headed engraved cane that was given to J.C. when he retired as superintendent of the Sunday school, first superintendent after 29 years. So it's in a case underneath his picture.
It's quite a lovely picture, so that if you go into the United Church, you can see this up on the wall. It's very nice. Yes?
I just wondered if Dr. Sherin and Romaine, did you ever make any calls out to Hall Glen area? The Rouses and the Paynes or the Littles?
Yeah, I knew the Paynes out there very well. The one, I've forgotten her name now, they had the grocery stand. Who would that be?
Daisy.
Daisy, yeah. My golly, I remember her so well. She was a wonderful person. You know, I never sent her a bill, The reason being that I knew after the vegetable growing season was over and she closed her little kiosk out there, that she'd come in and pay me with rolled up ones and twos and so on that she made in the vegetable stand every year.
Any other questions or any other memories? Bill?
Dr. Sherin, you have a fairly new hobby that I talked to you about in recent times. I'm just wondering.
Bridge?
Wondering how you're making out with the New Horizons band.
Oh, I'm sorry you brought that up. I really am. After a year and a half, I gave it a bye. I really liked the people there. I had a wonderful time, but I think my musical ability is noticeable by its absence.
What were you attempting to play?
Clarinet.
Oh, that's admirable. Any other? Right? Yes.
I own the building that Dr. Sherin has affectionately called the warehouse. We call it Sherin Place. We want to keep the Sherin name on the building. A couple of questions. I just wanted to know if you happen to know when the little apartment was put in, when that was actually renovated, and also what happened to the barn? Because I know when my grandmother bought the building, Harry wanted the barn.
Well, the barn was dismantled. That's when I got the pieces of wood off the floor. As far as the renovations, I think that would have to be prior to 1956 when I came here.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I thought perhaps in the 40s sometime, but I wasn't
No,
sure.
I think it would probably be in the 50s because it was fairly new.
Okay. Thank you.
Good to see you.
You too.
Any other thoughts, questions?
Do you ever hear from Sabo?
Yes. Sabo keeps in fairly close contact. He's in North Carolina now. He had gone back to Nigeria, but the infrastructure there wouldn't support him. There was just no way he could make a living. So he came back to Canada. He married his childhood sweetheart from Nigeria. They have one child, Aipu is her first name. Aipu. Her second name, believe it or not, is Blanche, named after my wife. And those of you who know what Blanche is white. And he's as black as charcoal. So I don't know what his friends think about that. Anyway, Sabo called us a few weeks ago, and he's hoping to come with his daughter to see us in May for a week. So,
Is he still nursing?
yes, he's nursing. He's working in a hospital in an ICU or the emergency ward. I can't remember which. He does that on weekends, and he goes to college during the week, and he's working on his Bachelor of Science in Nursing. I thought he was a smart one.
Anyone else? Well, what do you say after an evening like this? It's been absolutely wonderful. We've just been so blessed to have you here. And everybody that is here has such wonderful memories of you because you are a very, very special person. And your family and the history of the Sherins have done so much for Lakefield. And you sure have carried on that tradition. It's been an absolute honor to have you here tonight.
Thank you.